Hey, family, it's your sister here, Jocelyn, and welcome to another episode of Faith on the Journey. If this is your first time tuning in, we welcome you and want you to know that we are here and committed to help you strengthen your faith, heal your heart, and discover a sense of community. And we do so through a number of ways, one being this broadcast, where we bring guests from all different walks of life to share their testimony and to share resources to support you on your healing journey. In addition to this, though, we also have a number of services that you can take advantage of, and you can learn more about those things on our website at faithonthejourney.org. We offer trauma healing groups throughout the year, which are essentially Bible studies to help you to heal from trauma. We train churches on how to offer those healing groups in their congregation as well. In addition to that, we also have counselors available to serve you who specialize in Bible based trauma informed care and grief counseling. These resources and so much more are available for you to take advantage of. So, again, please visit our website at faithonthejourney.org. And I encourage you to subscribe. That way, you can receive information week after week to support you and those you love on your healing journey. So, today we're going to talk about a topic that is extremely relevant. I've had many conversations with members of our community about how they are a caregiver, a primary caregiver, and the struggles of that, and how, as much as we love our loved ones and want to be there for them, it takes a lot out of us in those moments. And it's a very lonely space to be a caregiver. And so, we're going to spend some time diving into that today. And I was blessed to be connected with a beautiful woman of God, Kieran Hamilton, and she's a former caregiver of her father for many years, and she took care of him until his last days. And her story and testimony is incredible. She is also a student and a wife, and she did all this while caregiving. And so she's going to come on the show today and share just a snippet of her testimony that will hopefully give you hope on your journey. So we welcome you to the show today, Kieran.
Hi, thank you so much for just allowing me to share my story. Yeah,
Yes, excited to have you. We had a conversation a couple weeks ago as I was learning about your story, and I'm like, wow, there's so much that can be learned from just your testimony. And so I would love for us to start this broadcast by just having you just kind of talk about your walk and in your life growing up,
mhm.
and then what kind of eventually led into you caregiving for your father.
Yeah, and I hope it can give people hope. So just to back it up, it is my father that I was caregiving for, as you mentioned. Um, so my father and my mother met. They got together and were married, and they were separating or taking a break space wise when they got pregnant with me. And um, so my dad was living separately from my mom, and uh, when I was born, they were still separated. They stayed separated till I was 7, and then they decided finally to proceed with a divorce. My mom wasn't getting the support she needed, she felt like, and they weren't reconciling. Um, so that happened when I was about 7. I think it was about 2002. Um, my dad's mother had passed away the previous year to his divorce. So now he was living on his own, and I'd only known him really living with his mom. When they got divorced, they got a bifurcated divorce. It was a divorce where the issue of custody is separated, and they went to family court for that because they didn't really have issues with how they wanted to separate, just who should get custody. And my dad had always said he wanted joint custody. My mom fought that, and he ended up losing to him because she was a working mom. And my dad had way more time as a retired person. Um, some health concerns weren't really taken into account. He had a previous history of mental health problems that wasn't brought up really. He had manic depressive bipolar disorder and unmedicated for 50 years. So um, that is going to lead into the rest of the story later on. But 2002, they separate fully with divorce. And then 2003, I go to live with him because they asked who I'd want to live with. I said, I can't choose between my parents. I love them both. And I felt bad for my dad living alone. So I go to live with him. I'm 9 years old, and that's a really rough time to be a girl with a single father raising you and under the best conditions. But he was an amazing father in so many ways. But there was very quickly, things that I learned in the first 4 years of him, taking me in. And that was that, he had a lot of things just behaviorally that he didn't know how to do for himself. And so caregiving began at an early age, realizing that he wasn't necessarily fit emotionally sometimes. And then, going into, 2004, I was in fourth grade. I had been there barely a year. He has a quadruple bypass. He has, the year after that or so, a couple feet of his small intestines taken out due to a bowel infection. And he had already had a back surgery the previous year also. So there was a lot of stuff like in fourth or fifth grade, I'm, dressing and cleaning wounds on his back after he gets out of, the hospital because he doesn't go to rehab. He has a child at home and he doesn't want to have to ruin his custody agreement. So I'm cleaning sutures and, going with him to all his doctor's appointments, missing school for that. And it really kind of winds down once I get to high school, his major health problems. But there were some pretty traumatic things pretty early on with worrying about his health. And I think I was very aware that he needed help and my help, because my older siblings from a previous marriage also had a very strenuous relationship with him, due in part to his like emotional behaviors in the past and the past relationship with their mom. So this is where my faith journey kind of comes in is, I'd been raised, my dad was more agnostic. I had a background with looking around at a lot of different faiths. He had a cultural anthropology degree. So he wasn't a man of respecting Christianity but he didn't have anything against it. He had things against it, but he didn't mind you pursuing your religious things. And so my mom came from the Black Baptist church, Southern background, and I never was too interested in it, but I love the stories of Jesus. I just never liked church culture. My dad, entering into high school, he's getting more and more kind of argumentative with me, and we have these back and forths every once in a while. And, one time we're having a disagreement with my brother over the phone, and I'm trying to ask my dad to be reasonable. And he turns his frustration in terms of verbally into everybody's against him, how he doesn't want to be in the world. And this leads to them doing a 72-hour hold on him, because my sister and my brother were concerned for my safety, for his safety. My dad could have been in danger, and that was a fair thing, but I think he was very resentful of that long term. But ultimately, it leads me to staying with my mom for a time. And with that, I go to a summer camp. I'm having like the worst year of my life. I turned 16 and I moved across the place. I'm making new friends, but it's not really a lot of friends. And it's just a hard time to move in. And I meet someone who wants to mentor me, this older woman, and she takes me to this camp and she tells me about Jesus. And I've been thinking about God because so much was going wrong and I was frustrated. And that summer I've been thinking a lot about it because I came from a background of being very analytical and serious. And I said, God, if you're real, make yourself known, because it feels like life is pretty bad right now. And I don't see you in this stuff right now. And if you're real, I just want you to be in here in my heart. So yeah, that was the beginning of my faith journey and all that stuff leading up to it, with all of his health conditions and just living in turmoil with someone who you don't know how they're going to act at the drop of a hat. I was there praying to God most times, and I don't know what was different about this, but I really did ask him and invite him into my heart, which was different than just asking for something transactionally. And I understood that at 16. I didn't want to get into a camp high. So I had already been reflecting on whether I was interested in Jesus before coming to camp, because I'd seen what he was doing in my mentor's life. She had just lost her mother. And it kind of resonated with me that he was real. There wasn't a voice in my head. It was a lot of just favor and grace that was shown to me in this time of fear. And I said to myself, what could be the worst thing to happen? I thought those worst things might happen. And instead, at every turn, God showed me people who knew him and wanted to love me and wanted to care for me. Um, and even people who didn't feel that way. I could tell that he was putting moments in my life that were pivotal, regardless of whether I enjoyed them at the time. They were very hard, and you thought, how could I get through this? So that was the beginning of faith.
That's huge, and your faith obviously is played a major role, I'll say, in your ability to do what was coming next for you in the caregiving space, right?
Yes. So having grown up with a father that I first felt pity for, obviously I loved him, but mostly I felt sad, when I got into living with him. Is that I realized that there was a difference of actually living with him and these, manic depressive episodes of arguments, and mania made me very stressed out. And, the depressive episodes also, but it was different. And so all of a sudden, I really was just ready to leave his house. I was like, when I get back, when like I'm not gonna be there. I just want to be done. When I get 18, I'm leaving. I'm never gonna say anything to him ever again. Much like I saw the strenuous relationship with my siblings with him, but they'd always checked in because I was there. And as I got closer and closer to 18, I started realizing, um, one, I could have a conversation and just understand that this person was beyond the ability to ever kind of apologize for their behavior. But what he did was not argue with me when I presented my thing. And even that's beyond some people. But, I presented how I felt about things that had gone on in my childhood and, just the parentification I took on and all these other things. And I told him, I forgive you, regardless of whether you are sorry. This is what I feel. And I love you. And that came from immense work in those last years of adolescence. And so that laid down the groundwork because I understood how Jesus invited me into his family with forgiveness for, I had been cruel with my words in my youth and, growing up very sharp tongued, probably to, dealing with a lot of pain I was dealing with at home. I realized like I had caused a lot of hurt to people. And my dad's hurt was reflective of his mental unrest inside. And that allowed me to realize, we're both just hurt people, really hurting others, and um, that was the beginning of the next stages of, being willing in adulthood to take on more of an active caregiving role. Um, but yeah, that yeah,
That's that's a lot though, like, there's a lot of work that you described that was involved, work around forgiveness, work around showing compassion, even if, he wasn't willing to apologize, even if he might have been mean to you in certain moments, and so for you, I wanna have you kinda be real about the emotional roller coaster that might have put you on in moments, and how your faith played a role in giving you peace,
yeah,
when you had difficulties.
yeah. So, with someone who has these kind of emotional disturbances, sometimes uh, my dad could be one of the best people on the best day, which means that you trust them, you love them, you know that they're great. But he also was very possessive of my time. And so, you know, with my mom or with friends, it was like, there'd just be one day where he's like, I just don't ever see you. And, be frustrated with me and just talk about how that other person was really just trying to monopolize me. And so, there's these emotional games that were being played. And then there's just also the character, when you have a child of divorce, they always tell the parents, don't talk about each other in a negative light. It really does cause you to look at your parent and realize their flaws because they're looking to tear down everyone that you love. And it is something that I see a lot of people who are hurting do when they've been hurt by someone and they have to share someone in their lives with someone. And both my parents had that problem, but with my dad, he would just go to places that you should never go with conversations and with hurtful words. And to the point of unreasonableness. And then, he'd mean that. So it was hard because you trust this person. And beyond that, just about myself and putting me down, which was, polar opposite of how he usually treated me. I mean, 90% of the time I could do no wrong. And then sometimes I just felt as though I was nothing but wrong. And that felt very hurtful when your whole world is built on your earthly father's love and respect and how much you're doing that is so great that he admires in you. And so my self-worth wavered with that. And then also um, my hurt over how he talked about my friends and family. And just ultimately, it was very depressing and very upsetting and almost, uh, you know, kind of painful in the way that you sit there and you say, why would you put me in this situation? It's emotionally abusive, God, I shouldn't be here. This hurts, I was a child, so it just doesn't make sense to be in a situation where you can't escape it. And beyond can't escape it, like, I mean, I remember trying to go to the library to do schoolwork, and my dad would call the cops. These are things that you do for a delinquent child. So it's reconciling some pretty serious emotional abuse. And but also at the same time, it's hard because emotional abuse is not reflected on the same way as physical abuse, and it's complex. It's very complex. Never were those things all right, and never have I ever, sat there and said, yeah, he was a perfectly healthy man and did good things all the time. But I think a lot of my siblings cannot, forgive that same way. And I think Jesus is the only reason. I think now about what I did in those past, years. It would took 2 years to forgive him, and while living with him. And I think it's crazy to think I did that under that house. But I realized this person cannot form a healthy relationship with anyone around. They are very secluded. You're their only lifeline to society. And that says something, that they are in need of some serious help, and it's not okay what they're doing. It's not okay how they treat you. And when you confront them and when you stand up to say what you're doing is wrong, but I love you, or even I care for you, but I can't be around this. And you put that boundary up. So when I became 18, I did leave, and so I spent periods away, like a month or 3 months. And if he was going to be disrespectful, I wasn't going to be there. And I said that, I'm not going to do that. I don't have to anymore. And it's harder with it when you're a child. There was no options there. Once I was an adult, I was able to create a healthier relationship, by limiting access to myself. And that's not something everyone can do. And I understand that, so this is only representative of my relationship with my father. For the most part, I'd say, there's that saying that you have to put 10 positive interactions in to erase one negative thing.
Mm.
The negatives were pretty negative, but overwhelmingly, I had so many positive experiences. I mean, if you talk to some of my high school friends, they would say my dad was one of the only adults who ever would talk to them like they were an adult, which is a problem sometimes too when you want to argue with a teenager. But he also had this capacity to care for and counsel people, which actually I've learned is, something that a lot of people with bipolar disorder do really well with, caring for others.
So
But yeah.
you took time away, but then
Mhm.
from my understanding, some things led you to come back, and that was a choice, a deliberate choice that you made. I would like for you to spend some time talking about that and how you also got some support, it sounds like, through that process to help you to work through some of the pain you were experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, while I was away, and briefly after I came back, I also got counseling, which was very important to my healing. So that was happening in the later adolescent years and beyond. And I think counseling is a very important part of the healing process. I don't think, you need Jesus and you need a therapist or a counselor, Um, I had a great Christian counselor who didn't identify herself as a Christian, but looking back, I can barely believe that there's anything that wasn't Christian about the forgiveness she was telling me about. And it heals yourself to forgive others. It really does. And that's hard even now to deal with sometimes. But I will say, back in those days, it was a different capacity with being with someone who could say that's not right. Someone to confirm, how you should be treated. Uh, and so I literally just ended up going and getting that help that I needed. And I feel like it's very important, especially if you're in a caregiving situation, because I had to go back in the last year that my dad, I was caregiving for him. So as I went away and into my adulthood, I spent some time away. And when my dad gets sick for the first time as an adult, um, I had just started dating someone, and, I was going in to check on him. He was hospitalized, and I started realizing how he was living without me, and I realized he needed a lot more help than what he wanted. And once again, the bipolar disorder comes in because he doesn't want to receive any kind of help with his lifestyle choices. And it's like, I live this way, this is perfectly fine. Without my mother and my future husband at the time, my boyfriend, I don't think I could have done as much. So this was 2015 or so. I'm just in my early 20s, and I'm going back and forth after his major hospitalization. This is a mitral valve replacement. So this is a heart condition thing, and it's a major surgery, and it's the first major surgery in like 10 years. So I'm over here, looking through his home, and it's in disorder. And I'm telling him I'm going to clean it. He's like, don't do that. Don't throw out my stuff. Don't do this or that. And I don't need any help. I don't need to use a cane, blah, blah, blah. All these things that, just tell you that he's not in his right mind. He doesn't want to make decisions. He's always been hard headed, but it's starting to become more and more clear that something is different about his mental status. And going into the next couple months, I'm helping him by coming by, cleaning a little bit here, taking him out to groceries because he's not driving well. He's shifting over in lanes, and he's putting himself into danger because of his weakness in his arms due to heart surgery. And he doesn't know how to take care of himself. And so my husband and I are visiting every other weekend or so. He has some kind of difficulty with us, and but we're getting to deal with him and get to know him better in this stage of life. But he's very resolute in not wanting help. And we get to 2017, and he gets hospitalized. Right before then, he had been going through some financial struggles because of how bad his health was, and all these health bills that he had for years and years, and new ones that he was accruing. So ultimately, he files for bankruptcy right before he goes into a hospital in 2017. For months, he wasn't paying his mortgage. He goes into hospital. He's intubated. He's put under. This is for a minor surgery that went bad, and he ends up with a stroke and backed up kidneys. So now I'm looking at, my dad is intubated. He's in a medically induced coma, and my mom is driving me to and from the suburbs every weekend to get him to just be there in the hospital room. I'm taking off work. I'm not able to do schoolwork anywhere but the hospital, which is very incredibly difficult to do. But I'm also having to go to his house and say, okay, one, this place needs to be put in order. I can't find any of his bills, and there's a pile of mail that I don't know what I need from it. And I don't have access to his cards or his accounts. I don't have the money to pay his bills. And then I started seeing like notices that he's going to be evicted. And I'm thinking about this, and I'm talking with my siblings, and he's going through these major health things that require him to be in a long-term hospital This is from about September and October all the way through to spring. And so I'm getting help from my mom and my siblings somewhat, but it's like the kind of help where I have so many voices speaking in, and it's so unclear, and it's so hard to get control and access to someone's finances and dealing with those kinds of things. And you're trying to make medical decisions for them because they're not in their right mind when they're going through something so traumatic and you're losing, you know, some oxygen to your brain, and you have a stroke going on. So I'm like early 20s trying to deal with this. This is incredibly stressful. My mom is helping me, but people help you in very practical ways. And ultimately the bulk comes down to a lot of things that are just really difficult to get done, no matter how much help you have. But yeah, I had a lot of help with figuring out where I was going to take him, because he's in the hospital, he's recovering. I'm realizing he's going to be evicted. Not evicted. He's going to have his house repossessed. Sorry. And so we're getting to February and I have to make a decision. And I was like, maybe I'll put him in a nursing home. That's what's best. I don't want this to affect my life and blah, blah, blah. My mom is like, you can't do that to your father. He still has the determination to get better. And I was like, you know what? I do feel bad about that idea. I don't want to do that. And so I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to caregive? I don't have money just sitting around. Like, how much does he make? Okay, well, can I somehow stay with him, and then my mom subsidizes me to some extent for a while and we figure this out? So my mom, who's divorced from this man 17 years or whatever at this point, is saying, I'll give you the money, because I was going to give you money to continue your student pursuits and your education. So she's helping subsidize her ex-husband and her daughter, living together while I caregive for him. So we move in an apartment downtown near Northwestern, because that's where all of his doctors are. And we're deciding that we're going to, just take care of him. I will do most of the work. And then it comes to the night that I'm supposed to pick him up from this long-term healthcare facility, because he's maxed out his Medicaid days or Medicare days. And when I get there, they haven't ordered a wheelchair or anything. And I have no clue how I'm going to get this man out of the car on the other side. And, I'm just ill prepared. And it just becomes very clear that this is going to be a lot harder than what I thought. It's not just, oh, my dad's going to use a walker for a little bit, but he mostly can do things for himself. I thought that's what was the case. And I get him home for the first time, and we have to figure out how to get upstairs. I realized that first night, within like the first couple hours, he can't toilet himself. So there's a whole bunch of issues with incontinence and that kind of thing is difficult to on the fly realize. I can't wait, 30 minutes for my mom to walk over from her building every time my dad needs help, because I don't want to see him immodestly. I don't want to see his nudity. I want to keep it's something that nobody wants to ever do, is see their parent, in a compromised position like that. And so it was very hard to realize the first day, maybe this was a bad decision. And I remember my mom and I, the first night, she's like, this was a mistake. You should not have to do this. You know what? I will just cancel this. We won't do this. And I told her, no, we're not going to do this. We had a very big argument about this. My future husband was there also. And we're talking, and I'm saying, no, I am sure that I want to do this now, which is crazy after what I've just been through, just with him and everything. And she's like, well, you don't have his diabetes medicine. You don't have anything together. And I was like, yeah, they let me just take this man, and I have no clue what to do until I get some more advice. And it was really feeling my way through so many things, medically speaking. So going to the pharmacy and having to negotiate, because I didn't know his Medicare card, where it was or what the number was, and ending up overpaying, so much money for a medicine, and then having to negotiate all these bills. And so it's constantly administrative work but at the same time, you're emotionally tapped, dealing with the exertion and then the feelings of really loss and kind of dealing with, the pain of seeing your loved one in a different light. They're different, you know?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, and I just wanted to pull that out a little bit more because there is a thing of grieving a loved one while they're still alive that I don't think people recognize. And so, can you kind of speak to that grief that you were experiencing a little bit more? And I don't know if you were still in counseling at the time when you were experiencing the the second round of caregiving while you were grieving.
Yeah, I was not in care. I had not gone back into counseling. After about 19, I didn't think I needed it anymore. I thought it was not necessary also just because of costs, and time. And I was living my life as a young person. So I thought that I was kind of in need of just some space from that time. I was pretty healed. Um, but as life amps up, you kind of forget that you kind of probably need to go back to it when things are getting rough. And so um, in that moment, I didn't have any kind of emotional support system, but I had been dealing really well for a long time with the tools I had previously had. I think it would have been better immediately to get into some counseling. But yeah, his his being changed right away. So there was in that hospital's time, my sister, who spent less time with him overall, consistently noticed way more changes. And I think I had noticed changes more often when I hadn't seen him, like with big gaps in between. And this was the first time I was seeing him, uh, you know, change, but I didn't really want to believe it. And so, the nurses and my sister were telling me he has sundowning, and I'm like, what is sundowning? Well, he gets confused and doesn't know what year it is. And I'm like, no, when I talk to him, that never happens, or he's just, he's tired when you're talking to him. And so the early stages of dementia were really hard for me to admit to. I think it took me like a year or a year and a half to really see what my sister was saying, but I remember being angry with her. I remember like yelling at her. I was like, "What are you saying? Why would you say that? You are like what he says, you want to be difficult or whatever." And I don't remember what I said to her, probably something not nice. And because I was frustrated, and my mom was right on board with me, just like did not want to see that there was a change to his memory. Um, and what I realized very quickly is sundowning does not just happen at sundown. So the term was a little confusing for me. Also, I was overwhelmed with so much going on. But the grief that you realize over time is like, at first I was doing things for him and he would, throw a napkin right on the floor. I was like, I know you're a slob sometimes, or whatever, just a little joke here and there. But I wouldn't say that to him. But I'd say, I know you're messy or whatever, but you know better than to throw something on the floor. Don't do that when I'm, taking out the trash, I'm doing the cooking, I'm doing the cleaning, I'm getting your medicines, I have to go to school, I'm doing all the laundry. Don't be disrespectful, And then I'm talking to him, getting frustrated, giving a little lecture. And then I realized, like probably 2 years in, he just doesn't think of what to do without you literally navigating him through it verbally. And so there were so many times that I just realized the limitations of what he mentally would process to do if I wasn't there. It was just so many confusing things, like sliding out of the chair when he knows that he can't get back up by himself, and finding him on the floor when I went out for a small walk and I said, okay, I'll be right back. Just got to go around the corner, pick up your medicine. And so it was scary sometimes because he was doing things that I was scared of. They were dangerous, or like frustrating. And I'd be just confused. Like, I was like, why didn't you call out to me? Why didn't you press your button? Whatever. If I was in the other room and you didn't know how to get something, don't put yourself at risk. And so, you get falls and things like that. And then you start to realize that you're dealing with someone who's kind of, there's a regression to like childhood. And along with, the incontinence and everything, it can be as stressful as when people take care of a small child, but without some of the positive parts, it's really sad. It was overwhelming at many times, like to sometimes I would go and hide, in a room after I'd done everything I need to do, and just, he'd be like, "Where are you? I just want to talk to you for a second." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll be out there in a second." And I'd just be laying there to kind of just recuperate and recover. And I realized, like, that's a very common feeling parents feel. And then I realized, like, there's a lot of similarities to this, but the pain is that I, sometimes wanted just all these stressful things at the end of the day to just talk to him like we used to, and in the positive moments, like when we had great conversations about, oh, what was going on with my friends, and but then he would forget my friends, and he would forget, oh, do you remember that time we went on that vacation here, or whatever. And so you're losing all these positive memories with this person because you're the only one who remembers them. And they just don't have the capacity to be the same person. um I think the biggest thing is they're not the same person, and so you're caring for, in many ways, a memory of who you loved, and loving the person who's in front of you now, which also, with all the trauma emotionally that I was just talking about, made it easier and harder, because he was not ever as emotionally difficult as he was when I was a child. So in many ways he was much better, but there was still that air there, and that was still that missing part of the father who raised me, even in the good aspects.
Mm. Yeah, that's so challenging. And I know there's much that we can unpack in what you just shared, but I do want to move forward in your story because you've I feel like this segment or this part is really important to share about when your father did finally make his transition and the emotions that came with that. So can you spend a little time talking about that season and what took place afterwards?
Yeah. Yeah, caregiving in and of itself was emotionally taxing, but I never for years saw where the end would be. And that's really odd, because you'd say, well, why wouldn't you see where that end would be? Well, my dad was like 76 when he passed. And so that's still relatively young. So I was still thinking about him in reference to how young that age is. Sure, people die then, but, he was on, mostly had plateaued with my caregiving to relative health. And then, as the pandemic started, he was decreasing frequency of moving, and losing a lot of luster with, having things to live for. His days were becoming more taxing, and he didn't get up an entire month from bed. And I literally remember having a discussion, and I even recorded it. And I've looked back on it. So sad, because it's the dementia also talking. And this man is, I'm saying, can you get up? Are you struggling to get up? Do I need to, are you having new mobility issues? And the issue was, it's just some great depressive episode, which was really hard with the pandemic and everything. There wasn't anything to do about it. And he was at so many risk factors for socializing in the building he was in. I didn't want him to, you know, socialize too much with people, and, living in an apartment building, that's very complex. And so he gets onto dialysis. And so this is a year about over a year from when he passed away. And dialysis was a very hard thing for him. Had to be heavily medicated with um, Prozac, basically, to kind of relax himself into getting this treatment. Every day was a torture with that. He really didn't enjoy it. And so there was, regardless of everything else plateauing and not getting better, but just kind of staying kind of normal bad health for someone who has had so many health conditions. He's had like 6 to 12 back surgeries and multiple heart surgeries in his lifetime. He was doing pretty good for all that. Um, you know, but you start to see it weighing heavy on him emotionally. And he asked me constantly, as his memory is getting worse, how long do I have to do this? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to take all these pills? And in that last year, I realized it was not worth it in many ways to him. And I was trying to find more ways to make his days worthwhile. And he was on the edge of pneumonia for, I think, 6 months. And in the last month, they couldn't get the water off of him. And I went to see him the last day, The day before the last, I was hanging out with a friend, and I was supposed to go, and I was on the highway to get to her. And he tells me, "You have to come see me." I've been seeing him every other day because he had been in the hospital for 2 months straight. And so this was the day I don't usually visit him. And I was like, well, I need some rest. And I had gotten so used to him going in and out of hospitals. You have to pick your battles on what days you'll be there, what times you'll be there, because you do need to rest. You do need to take care of the rest of your life. You have to go take a shower, and you have to eat food with your family. You have to go and come back. And so when we got to that day, he told me I had to emphatically come that day. I said, okay, Dad, I'm going to come, because I could tell he was feeling stressed, and he had been telling me he wanted some kind of new health, something to change it. He's like, I'm scared of dying. The days before, they had told me, you need to sign a DNR. And I was like, well, I just want him to come home. And I was starting to realize, like, he wouldn't make it through the year. And then that same week, I was like, he's not going to make it through the month, maybe. And then, that day before, I really started thinking, oh yeah, make it through the month. He's not. I saw him that Friday, and I talked with him, and that was the last time I was going to ever talk with him, really, because I saw my friend. I went over at 4 o'clock. They usually cut off the visiting hours. They had made me sign that DNR the day before, so this was all still not clear to me that it was not looking good. It was still like he was talking, but he couldn't come downstairs to the meeting room. And so I went up to him in his room. And when I got to the stage of the next day, I was supposed to visit still. And I said, I'm going to go back, because he was so bad that he couldn't be even rolled down to sit in a chair for a long time. He was too tired for that. I was like, okay, well, I'll go to him. And my mom was supposed to visit with me that day. I was waiting outside. I got there at 12. 2 o'clock comes by, and she's still late. So I was like, oh, I'll go up and just see how he is and talk with him for a moment, and just start my visit. I go in there, and as soon as I walk in, I could tell he was not going to make it through the weekend, if that night. And I remember just looking at him, and I knew I had to leave immediately before I went back in, because his face was waxen and his eyes were glassy, and there was just a general sheen that I could tell that he was not well. He was in his final day. And I waited for my mom to get there. I called my friend immediately. I said, you remember he told me to come yesterday. Now he can barely speak up. Like, he spent all of his energy. Like, when I went in there, I said, hi, how are you? I was like, Dad, I'll be right back. And he said, I love you. And all these things, just one or two sentences. And that was most energy he had that day. And I could tell he was holding on. And so when my mom arrived, I talked with her, and I said, do not go in there and act upset. You have to realize what's happening. And so this had been a struggle between us for a long time, is like, just the reactions of wanting to take control, wanting to control the situation, fix the situation, is what my mom has always felt. She grew even stronger in friendship with her ex-husband as he was, in this caregiving situation the last couple of years. And it was really hurting her to see him in the hospital for those last months. And she was telling me, we need to get him, shipped to a different hospital. Someone else can care for him. He will get better. And I was like, I don't think that's going to happen, Mom. I'm going to be honest with you. I understand his medical history very well, and it's looking harder and harder. And you can go anywhere, but if they can't get the water off his body, they can't, and pneumonia is getting worse and worse. And they were doing everything they could. And so I was ready for her to have a bad reaction, and she did, but we controlled that. And I mean, dealing with that in the lobby, looking like we're having an argument, probably stressing people out. And then, it's a lot to deal with, having to manage your family and hide your emotions from the relative who is passing, and just trying to make the most of that moment. And so I called my brothers and sisters, and I'd been telling them, oh, well, I think you need to come see him soon. I think you need to come see him soon. And that week I'd kept saying it. And I think I was just realizing how quick it was happening, even if I hadn't recognized it. And so my brother was like, I'll see him Sunday. And I said, you can't wait. And it's my brother's birthday that day. So this is really hard. And I'm like, you can't wait. Dad's not going to make any more days. And it's 3 days before dad's birthday. Um, and I was like, you guys have to come by today. And so my brothers come because they're in state. My sister's not in state, but I held the phone for like 45 minutes, an hour, multiple times, just, getting a video chat in. But he could barely blink. His eyes were dry, and he was just kind of sitting there with his mouth agape, just, and tired, and you could see he was weary of the world. And so I just soothed him. I told him, Dad, you've been a good dad, in many ways, and we love you, and it's okay. It's okay. And so in many ways, I wasn't ready for him to go. And we spent till 8 o'clock there, and it had been an air conditioned in his room. I had been there for so many hours. I hadn't anticipated for that to happen that day. So I was ready to go home and eat because I hadn't eaten anything. And I said, Mom, you stay with him, and I will be back to spend the night and sit by his side so he can have someone there. I left at 8 o'clock, and as I drove away, I had told him, I just wait right here. I'll be right back. Don't do anything. I remember saying, don't do anything. And when I got home, I walked in my door, I closed my door, and I went to the restroom to, freshen up. And as soon as I got there, I was like, before I even hop in the shower, I have to call, because I have to pray. Because I was like, I have to pray. I'm sitting there, I have to pray. Okay, I'm going to pray right now. You have to call your dad and pray with him, pray over him, let him know your feelings, is what something told me. I felt I had to. And in those moments, it was crazy because it was 8:40 when I got there. I called him at about 8:41. I couldn't wait barely any time from coming inside. And I'm sitting in the bathroom, about to get ready. And I literally call my mom. I say, Mom, let Dad know that I am praying for him right now. And that God just wanted me to let him know that. And also that I love him so much, and that it's okay. I'm okay. We're okay. All of his kids are happy and healthy, and we don't need him to hold on. That it's okay. We love you. And I didn't say not that he didn't need to hold on, but I said, it's okay. It's okay. Whatever he needs to do. And so she put the phone by his ear, and I told him everything was okay, and that we didn't, he was free from worrying about us, basically. I can't remember the exact words, but so that call ended at 42 or 45, and then 51. I get a call, 8:51. It's a nurse, and before my mom has even had time to process it, he was on a breathing treatment while I was praying for him. So he was breathing. He had heard those things. They go to take off the mask, and he is gone. And so that's at 8:50, and 8:51 I get the call. My mom didn't have the time to even, deal with it. She was sending me a text message, a long one. And it was moments, and he didn't, like many people, want to go while you're present. They don't go while you're present. And it just, that kind of timing felt very God ordained. And in the last days, my dad had let me pray for him, and he's never been a man who outright hated the idea of Jesus or anything, but was never fully engaged in it. And I don't know what ultimately happened with his soul, or with where he is in life with Jesus and anything. But I felt very comforted by that timing. And it was really hard just seeing how my siblings were dealing with it, in the space that they were with their relationship with him. I felt I felt sad that we couldn't get together more and have that kind of healing happen before he passed on. And it was just, it was sad to say in some ways. It was really hurtful, like any loss of a parent, but it felt like a release of his pain. Like immediately I was crying all day and I had been feeling terrible and scared of what it meant if he died. Because we find our parents so attached to our identity. And I called up people and I cried initially for the first 2 minutes. And then after that, I said, he is so released from the pain that he was in. He is feeling so much better and taken care of. I believe, at least, because he was miserable in so many ways in those last days. You know, he couldn't drink anything without it being thickened. There was so much that he wasn't enjoying about life and his limitations, and it just felt like now he was free from the pain, and that was a relief. And that's weird to say for a lot of people with grief, but it was also a relief of the responsibility, which feels really rough when you're a caretaker. Is now I don't have that as my main purpose in life, that I focus on you all the time and your comfort and your care. And so all of a sudden I'm sitting there and I'm like, the world is open, but it feels less. It feels emptier. And that was hard.
Yeah, I'm glad you spoke to that. That was actually my next question for you, was the relief that you felt in that moment. And um, was there any guilt, if you will, for feeling that relief after your dad passed away?
Oh yeah, there was guilt about any time I had argued with him about his diet instead of giving in to something that he wanted to eat as a treat. There was guilt about feeling better, about actually not being, overworked. I mean, I was on call 24 hours a day when I was caregiving for him. So it doesn't matter if I was in the middle of a phone call or I was out and about. I almost never had someone there to watch him, except for, maybe 5 days a week. I had 2 hours of help or three. And they were entertaining him. But that a lot of your day is actually spent with being that person's only connection emotionally. And so, my husband might help out, but he works full time. And so I'm not trying to ask him to do more work. And so ultimately it requires a lot of me emotionally, physically, and I'm drained. And so I'm getting up at 4 a.m. with calls. You come downstairs, I need this, I need that, or, come do this for me or whatever. And so we're living in the same building. It's very difficult, but I'm doing anything at the drop of the hat. And I felt very guilty not giving in more, not being unfrustrated sometimes. Like, I'd be like, I just was down here 20 minutes ago. But okay. Yeah, I'll help you with this, So when I'm trying to get my dinner done or whatever, all those moments of being slightly annoyed or not super enthused to wait on someone, all of a sudden you realize that you were there every day, everything. You wanted to always be the perfect version of yourself and positive, and that's not true and authentic or easy to do or healthy. And so I felt so bad emotionally about not being, always, 100. And I felt so bad about being relieved to be able to feel like I could go out. Like the first week I felt, yes, my dad is dead and I feel terrible about it. And I feel angry. I feel stressed out by the idea of planning his funeral. But also I feel like I can go for a walk. I feel like I can go to the store and not worry for a second, because it was just a life of worry. And the guilt that you feel is in everything. It's in not it's inescapable parts of dealing with grief. And I realized really quickly it's okay to feel guilty, but then I also had to reminisce on, when he was being difficult, and when he was thankful and all these different memories. It made me realize, like, I did my best by him and I did a really good job. That he even said so in the last 2 days, he was comforting me and wiping my tears as I signed the DNR. And he's like, "It's okay. You did great. You're a great daughter. I love you so much." And I remember just those words got me through the guilt, is the fact that I know that he was really thankful to be cared for and loved by me, and not in a prideful way, but that really healed me in so many ways.
Yes. Amen. Receive that.
Yeah.
Receive that. It's so true. And anyone who's listening right now, I know you are hitting something in a caregiver's heart right now because they're seeing themselves in your story. And it's a weight that is hard for someone who's not in it to understand,
Yeah.
the pressure of it all. But you did. You were there. You were a living witness of what it is like to be a follower of Christ in the love of Jesus through the sacrifice that you made from a place of love. And so I'm just so grateful for you sharing and being courageous to talk about your story in this very difficult season of your life. And I would love for you to, as we get ready to conclude, for you to share any encouraging words for someone who's in it right now. What would you say to them to give them hope?
Yeah. I'd say that, trust in God, find a good support system, find friends who can encourage you, because without friends who could encourage you about what you're doing and, reflecting on good decisions that you're making, it can be really hard to not be down on yourself and not think that you're always a failure. Um, Especially with the tensions that exist in caregiving. And I think especially when you're dealing with a very strenuous emotional relationship. And so make sure you have that support system. Seek counseling. It is imperative. I wish I had done it sooner in that journey. And give yourself some grace, give that person grace. Take the time to care for yourself. It's not selfish. That's very important. Take the time for yourself. Don't ever put that on the back end. You take care of yourself so that you can take care of them. And that means asking for help sometimes. And that means don't feel like a burden asking people and inviting people in on your struggles. Don't be embarrassed of whatever your home looks like, whatever your day looks like, of incontinence issues or whatever a person is dealing with, because your friends and family and community have seen it before. To some extent, someone has seen it and someone can be there for you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much for sharing your story today. You have blessed more people than you know, and I pray that God just pours back into you tenfold for the sacrifice that you've made from a place of love. But thank you again for being here on the show.
Well, thank you for sharing, letting me share that, because that has been weighing on my heart. That it is very hard. It's not clear resources wise how to deal with that situation, and it feels very lonely.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it does feel lonely, and that's the one thing that we like to communicate in this community is that you're not alone. A lot of times when you're going through these valley moments in your life, it is very lonely, but there's people who have gone through what you have gone through, and they'll go through it 10 years from now. It happens in life, but I hope that someone is encouraged by this story and they reach out to connect, find a support group, find a network of people. We're actually in this upcoming week, we're going to be hosting a Caring for the Caregiver workshop webinar that people can register for. And so I hope that you do so. And I think that at the end of the day, connecting with other people who have gone a similar road can be very encouraging.
Yes, yes, that's exactly why I sought counseling when I did at the end stage, is from other people who told me their experiences. So I definitely recommend that seeking community, seeking help, seeking those resources you guys are offering. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. And everyone, I appreciate you tuning into today's broadcast. Wow, what a amazing testimony of faith and love. And I hope that you share this with someone you know, especially those caregivers in your life who might be feeling alone in this walk. The pressures are seeming too much, and they just need a message to feel that they're not alone. So please share this with someone. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We are on the various social media platforms: YouTube, Facebook, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. So whatever form of media you like to enjoy a weekly message to inspire you, to strengthen your faith, heal your heart, and help you discover a sense of community. We're here for you. Also, we do have a team of Christian counselors available and ready to support you. They specialize in grief counseling and Bible based trauma informed care. And so please check us out and learn more at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. So that's it for now. Leave a 5-star review of this episode, and we look forward to seeing you next week. But until then, you keep your faith on the journey.